call the regular meeting of the Ledyard Town Council to order for August 24th. Please join me in the pledge of
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just call. Here.
Mr. Holmes?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes, here.
Mr. Soms?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Here.
8 here, 1 absent.
We have a quorum. Are there residents or property owners who would like to address the town council this evening? If so, please come up to the microphone and give your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Chris Kroll. I live at 10 Parkwood Drive in Galesbury. And I'd like to address concerning a case that was brought before last July's meeting, July 27th meeting, the Ledyard Health District litigations, and to see if there was any follow-up to that litigation. In that meeting, the attorney had said that the families were due to be out, and we're looking at moving July 30th, 31st that weekend. There's still one family living in the household. They did get an extension through the courts. I believe it was through September 15th. But we're trying to just follow on an update as to what's going on. Are they moving? Are they going to fix it? As far as we're concerned in the neighborhood, it doesn't matter who lives there as long as the septic gets fixed and we don't have to basically smell it anymore. It's been about a year now, and it's kind of tiring. I tried to call George Calkins at Ledyard. I've left a couple messages. He doesn't return any calls. So I was wondering if you had heard anything, if you know what the status is, and where we stand.
You have slightly different dates than the last thing I knew, that the extension was August 31, but Mayor, do you have anything later than that?
Well, I heard 2 weeks. When I talked to George yesterday, they had gone directly to the court, didn't go through Ledyard, and last he knew was 2 weeks.
So that would, because originally it was August 15th, so the 2 weeks would have taken to the end of the month.
I
haven't heard anything. You
I called the clerk of court,
and they
the
said,
clerk told me September 15th was
you have later information than we have. That's a second extension. There was some difficulty in finding a place to live on the part of that last family, I believe.
Well, to answer the question, I don't mean to cut you off, but this is up to the court.
I understand it's up to the court. What we're looking for is just...
I'm trying to give you the information that
right,
we have.
Information.
One property contracted to have the repair done.
And they started that yesterday, so that's in progress.
The other property, the house is in foreclosure, so it becomes the bank. I'm sure they're not going to fix it.
So as far as you know, they're still planning on moving out. It's just...
Right. The good news as far as you're concerned is that when the system stops being used,
the smell then stops. And that's what we're hoping for. Short term, long term, obviously we want somebody to move in that's going to take care of the place.
Right. But realistically, I don't think that the bank is going to, or whoever comes to be the property owner is going to move quickly.
I'm expecting a couple of years, but as long as, like you say, as long as the action is going on, and we just like to be kept informed is basically what it boils down to. We are concerned. We do have kids in the area. There are, personally mine have grown up, but there are kids that run around the area. There have been reports of rats, mice, and mosquitoes because of standing water. So it's not the neighborhood that we moved into when we bought. The second question was dealing with Ledyard. I understand we just renewed the contract with them. It was sometime this year, maybe
8 months ago then. Yeah, it was the beginning of the year.
Well, technically, it renews on July 1st, but by state statute, you have to withdraw by January 1st, 6 months earlier, if you're not going to renew. So the decision was made 8 months ago to renew.
With the new contract coming
but
in.
it renews with the fiscal year, which started on July 1st.
My question with that is, and I don't get too active or too involved in what's going on, and I probably should be more, but this case initially came and was filed back in September of last year. Why is it taking so long for the action and for Ledyard to take action and to finally get to this point? It never should have gotten to this point. It should have been dealt with as soon as that septic failed and as soon as it was made known that there was a problem in the neighborhood. It shouldn't take the people that live behind who have the septic running into their property, or the neighbor next door whose septic failed because of this. You know, this is something that was known about. We should be acting on this pretty quickly.
Same discussion we had.
So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But then we renewed the contract.
discussion we had.
Well,
And I understand that. This was probably already in the works
We
before
had to
all
make
this
the
came to your
decision
attention.
before January 1st. Most of the discussion, by the time it became apparent that this had been dragging on too long, it was past January 1st. So yeah, we've shared your frustration, probably not shared your personal pain as closely as you have, but we've shared your frustration over the last several months. But yes, the decision to renew was made prior to January 1st, prior to the point that came off.
Then I guess my last request would be if, and whoever deals with Mr. Calkins, if we could just ask him, or if you could just ask him to keep us as residents informed, or at least return our phone calls when we do call, so that we can have a discussion with him.
certainly a reasonable request.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other residents or property owners that wish to address the town council this evening? Seeing none, town commissioner boards.
I'm not sure if I'm following procedure here. Podium.
Please.
My name is Winston Haverhill. I'm the Regional Recycling Coordinator for SCARA, Southeastern Connecticut Regional Resources Recovery Authority. That's where your trash goes. I did a survey of Ledyard's recycling efforts this summer, in July and August. And I have a report. I'm going to go ahead and hand that out along with my card, so that if you have questions following this meeting, you can give me a call. So I'm going to hand that out. Yep. Thank you. What Ledyard has done is they went ahead and they changed their recycling program July 1 to go to single stream. And sometimes that term is a little bit confusing, but that essentially is for the recyclables, instead of separating cans and bottles and paper grades, they've gone to a system where they combine all of that. And the reason that's done is for efficiencies at curbside. The big boys, Waste Management, the larger companies, they want to automate recycling instead of having a guy separate it so they can compact it all. And they can use traditional garbage trucks to pick up recyclables as well. The downside is when you combine it all, now you have to go ahead and re-separate all because bits of metal and broken glass and so on get in the paper. So there's a lot more money at the back end for processing single-stream recyclables. In other words, there being the efficiency in the front end when you throw it all together. And the region here in Connecticut is going to single stream. The country is slowly evolving that direction. A lot of Connecticut's gone that direction for collection efficiency. So July 1, we went to single stream recycling. And in addition, that changeover resulted in revenues from the recycling stream accruing directly to the town. SCARA undertook a contract with William Integrated Paper when they closed the MRF, which was down in Groton on Flanders Road, whereby they built a single stream facility, and we cut contact with them so that they would accept single stream material from all the member towns, all 12 towns, and that revenue wouldn't fall below $5. So there'd always be a positive revenue flow. And so that's now, starting July 1, that's where Ledyard's recyclables go. So they're collected under contract with Sterling Spirit Services, and they bring them directly now to Waste Paper, and the trash continues to go to the waste to energy plant in Preston. So on the heels of that, what I wanted to do is go out in the field and take a look at what the recycling compliance is like. We put recycling bins out some 4 years ago. There never had been a container out there. People were using whatever they could use. So both following up the distribution of recycling bins as well as the advent of single-stream recycling, I wanted to go out and take a look. So what I did was in July and August, I went out early in the morning. Once the guys get out early in the morning. Sometimes they get out earlier than I think they're going to get out.
Get out earlier than the contract says they're going to get out.
Yes, it's supposed to be 7. Sometimes a little bit early, you get a jump. And I went to each of the routes. Your trash recyclables are collected Monday through Friday in the different areas of Ledyard. So I went out And I sampled on each of those routes households. I drove all the streets and did samples. Now, you guys already know this, but Ledyard's quite demographically, generally speaking, similar. You don't have public housing, for example, you don't have large tracts of public housing, and you don't have large sections of the buku-rich living in gated communities. And then I say that because we looked at a survey in London. It's very different. There's a lot of rental, there's a lot of lower income, and then there's a disparity. There's a lot of much more wealthy people beyond the hospital in London. So you get that contrast, the demographic contrast of housing type, income levels, and so on. And that's not so much prevalent here in Ledyard. So we did I think I drove every street, or most of them anyway, in Ledyard, and went out Monday through Friday ahead of the trash and recycling crews to get an idea, get a snapshot. And that's contained in this report. Now, in doing that sampling, there are some things that are missed. For example, yard waste won't show up because most of that, if it's in the trash, but not being recycled, it's going to show up in the fall and the spring when people are breaking the yards. Same thing with the increases from Christmas and Thanksgiving. If you do surveys of Thanksgiving, post-Thanksgiving, there's a lot more recyclables out. Cans, bottles, and so on. The same for Christmas. So you don't pick up some of these differences that relate to holidays or relate to seasonality of it. So what it is a snapshot, basically in time, in the summer. But the idea of the survey is to get a rough idea of where you are in terms of recycling compliance, and I think I accomplished that. The first finding was basically recycling compliance is pretty good. When you drive the streets, and you all know that, when you're about to head out on your recycling day, a lot of people have their blue bins out, okay? And that was pretty common right through each of the collection days, Monday through Friday. So in general, recycling was pretty good. People had their recycling bins out. And that was good to see, because I've seen other communities where looked at, and that's not the case. I could pick on New London, doing there from New London, but there was less compliance in New London than there was here. So what I did was I pulled this survey together, and you can read this. What I tried to do was I outlined how I designed it, what the objectives were, the collection routes, my limitations and findings, and then what my observations were. And those observations are as follows. First, as I know, there was good compliance. I was pleased to see that. Second of all, some of the material targeted by single stream, because the advent of single stream included other materials such as pots and pans, small metal items, large plastic items like 5-gallon buckets, plastic toys, things of that nature, that now can go into the single stream, into the recycling venue instead of the trash. And those seem to be largely absent in my review. A lot of people are not using the recycling, they're not using the recycling bins, or they're using the recycling bin and additional containers that are non-standard. And I think this is a legacy that goes back years ago, because the recycling bins went out 4 years ago, but prior to that, people just used whatever they could. Okay? And that, so that was pretty common, non-standardized containers. And there were problems with that now, in last minute. The Ledyard households that weren't recycling, no recycling placed them, and you had to examine them, because if you're using a non-standard container, sometimes it looks like there's no recycling, but actually are. The people who weren't in compliance, all the recyclables in the trash. And you could pretty much pick those up. So there were some households that just were not recycling anything at all. And whatever they had was in the trash. Some households were recycling only cans and bottles as though they thought paper should be recycled. And everybody has some paper junk, magazines. Everybody gets the Times. So there should be paper in there, and if there wasn't, that was a question. Some of the households, and this is very common, and this goes across the region, they don't recycle boxes, what I call chipboards, which is cereal, cracker, pasta, those kinds of boxes. Very commonly, when I check the trash, those boxes were absent in recycling, even though the recycling was out, and they were in the trash, so people seem to think that that item wasn't recyclable, when it actually is. So that is an area we need to emphasize. And then there were some of the non-curbside recyclables, that things that are recyclable, like large scrap metal, electronics, clothing, things that are not picked up curbside. There's a fair amount of that also. in the trash. So people were aware that they could take it down to the transfer station, or in the case of clothing, take it to one of the nonprofit clothing bins. I know there's one at the Gilsbury School, there's others in town. So those are some of the findings. So it becomes looking at what are the recommendations. And based on that survey, and not just the households I examined, but looking at it curbside, because I'm unfortunately been looking at trash for a long time, I get a pretty good feel just curbside, what's out there. Of course, the main thing is you really shouldn't look at trash in the summer, and then we'll go to the obvious disadvantages of that. But you want to do it in the winter, it's a better season to do it. That said, I think it would be helpful if Ledyard considered purchasing a small quantity of additional recycling bins, probably similar or maybe slightly larger bins, depending on price and quantity, to what's out there now. The ones that are out there now are 18-gallon containers. When recycling curbside first started, they used 14s, then they went to an 18. The long-term solution, and that's depending on how you define long-term, would be to go to a card system, and I don't foresee that in the near future. But in the interim, I think it would be beneficial to buy a small quantity of containers, maybe 400 plus or minus, and then take those containers and use those and place those where it's needed, where there are households not in compliance. So that household would then receive a recycling bin with literature saying, you're not in compliance, but here's a new recycling bin, we're assuming you don't have one. Here's what you need to be doing. Here are the cost savings for the town of Ledyard. And then report it that it's Mrs. Jones on Maple Street. Hopefully there's no Mrs. Jones from Maple Street. And then that can be followed up. In a similar venue, some people have the recycling bin out, but then when they get full, they get recyclables and throw them in the trash because it's not convenient, they can't be bought. So for people that have recycling overflow, it would be helpful, I think, also to take recycling bin, give that to them, thank them that you're doing a great job recycling. You notice you have a lot of overflow that should help you with your recycling effort to increase recycling. For Ledyard, your cost is already in the collection of it, both trash and recycling. That's the big nut. So the town already has total convenience. Their recyclables and their trash are picked up the same day, once a week. So it can't be any more convenient. You put out any ground. It behooves the resident to put as much stuff out of the trash into the recyclables as they can, because that's now where we can save the money. In July, and correct me if I'm wrong, and this is going to vary greatly, but the revenue for the recycling was over $40 a ton. That same material would have cost $60 in the negative, so you have a $100 swing right now. Now, that's not always going to be true, but you always have a $60 swing in terms of disposal. So anything I can keep out of the trash is going to save you right then and there $60, plus whatever the revenues are right now. They're 40, it could be 25, but we need, or the town needs, to move as much material out of the garbage stream into the bucket. So that's where you're at, and that's what I'd like to see happen. The authority would work with the town on that effort. We would help. We would pay for publicity, help you create it. We could do inserts again in the Thames, River Times, some ads and so on, indicate that we're going to be doing again, look at households that are not in compliance and so on. But I think there's significant savings to be had with purchasing small quantity bins and going back out and trying to boost that recycling rate.
What size do you recommend?
Well, it depends on the 18 gallons, same as you have now, are about $7.50 a unit, $7.50 a unit. And I'd have to go look at my paperwork, but the larger ones, you can go up to a 24-gallon. They run, I want to say, $12, $13, something in that range, depending on vendor and the quantity. When I bought them in the past, I always bought an even pallet count. So, you have to, there's the cost per unit plus transport. But all said and done here, the 18s are $7.50 and the other ones are about $12 per unit.
I'm sorry, may I ask a question?
No. Yes, you may.
We bought the original.
Do we buy them from Scara? Why didn't Scara buy them for us?
Well, the first ones you bought, I helped the town in terms of looking at the vendor and getting pricing and so on. So Scara got involved in a discussion on just that point. Why don't we buy bins, everybody will buy carts, which are a lot more expensive. And if we got into, well, I'm buying some, that town's not. And so they decided that in order to help the towns financially, and this is directed more at the carts, which are much pricier. The carts run about $50, $45 per unit. That the authority would finance, if a town went in and bought carts, the authority would finance that for 5 years. At a very low interest rate, I think it's 1%, 1.25%, something in that range. So a town would go ahead and acquire the bins. The authority would pay the vendor, so the vendors paid, and then we would bill the town, I think it's annually, at that, for that amount over 5 years with a 1% plus or minus interest rate. And for some towns that was attractive, especially for carts, because they are a significant expense. That's less so here. I think that the, let me grab my note. I did some back of the envelope.
Did your number of 400 come from your survey? So is that an educated, is that a number?
Yeah, it's hard to, until you go and stop at every household, it's hard to know, but I think the 400 was an even count per pallet for the 18 gallons. But I got pricing I told you to get pricing for 4,000 or 6,000. So I have incremental pricing for different quantities depending on where you want to go at. But I think the other ones, were 12. I think the 24 gallon were $12 a piece. So the 400 was at 750 was 3,000, and the 412 was 4,800. It's not a large ticket. The other advantage too is if the cost of the bins, let's say it's $4,800, $3,000, $3,000 to $5,000. That would be, that would pay itself back in a year because it would increase the recycling rate. So, from my perspective, I think it's a good investment. The cost, you're already there, you're picking it up. Now I think you move the material the direction you want to move it.
Well, every household was provided with a blue bin 4 years ago, right?
Yes.
So even the households that you observe not having one on the curb, they may have been.
It could be in the garage.
So, ordering 400 more may really not address the fact.
Or the resident moved. It's okay.
Or it was one of those we saw run over in the road.
But I really think that our biggest gain will be through education. Some of the examples that you gave, I felt that even the brochure that came out this summer didn't really give you the full picture. I don't think it stressed enough how people don't have to worry about the symbol on the plastic anymore, and that other kinds of scrap metal can be included, and the wording on food containers would make you think that food containers were not desired. And I'm sure what the real meaning is that you don't want the pizza box that's completely saturated with olive oil and cheese, and you don't want the round disc that came under the pizza. But if your pizza box is dry, well then recycle it. If the cereal box is clean, recycle it. But the brochure said food containers weren't to be recycled, so I think that's misleading. And I think if we got on a campaign of asking people, if you're going to use an old garbage can or a barrel of some sort for your recycling, then please label it. People, I haven't yet gotten to the point where I need more than my 18-gallon thing per week, but if I ever got there, I think I would be sure to label my containers so that it didn't go on the truck too. Or something,
One of the problems I found is that when that driver, recycler, he's driving down the road, he's looking at those blue bins because that's a call out to him as he's moving on a vehicle. One of the problems with the garbage, there were several stops I looked at and said, these guys aren't in compliance. So pull over and get out, you start opening lids, and they are. It's a recycling. It's a trash can, but they're recyclables.
Yeah.
So then you
labeled. Yeah.
Right. So the concern is that stop might get bypassed if they don't have at least the recycling bin out. So what I'd like to see is have people make sure if they're going to use an alternative container in addition, like a trash can or a hamper that goes all over the board, is to separate it. Put the trash here, put the blue bin here, and the trash can, so we know that it's because it doesn't call out that there are actual recyclables there. That blue bin makes it easy for the driver to see.
Sorry.
Perhaps a cheaper alternative would be to buy many thousands, some sort of sticker, maybe something that might be 12 inches by 12 inches, and,
Yeah.
something that you could put on any container, but it might be just as, might not be as recognizable as the blue container, but certainly a lot more than nothing.
Does SCAR have the sort of the internationally recognized triangular symbol in a sticker form?
Yeah, we could do that. But we could obtain, some kind of a sticker that says Ledyard Recycling, so on. And it would be cheaper, obviously, than buying the farm bins. The other concern is that over the years, people would put recycling on it, and then that barrel would then grade into the move, and that would become the trash barrel, and I'd put a different one in for recycling, because that one's all dented out. So, and some of them are like laundry hampers, or it's just all over the board. Some people are they've gone out and purchased a nice cart-style recycling bin. So it makes it, the advantage of the blue bin is that call-out. I really encourage you to look at that with hopefully the advent that down the road, maybe look at a car system.
How many tons of recycling did we do in July?
Boy, that's a good question. I don't know that off the top of my head.
$4,350.
$4,350 at $40 a ton.
40 or 41, I think, was what Steve told me.
So that's
over 100 tons.
I don't put my papers in the blue tub because they blow out.
Yeah.
So I still bundle my papers in paper bags or tie the papers up
Right,
and put it outside of the blue bin, because, and I think that's why some people are using garbage cans for the recycling, because with the blue bin being uncovered, I've had my milk containers blow down the road and have to collect it all. So I think part of it, that open thing, if it's a windy day, how this stuff goes.
There is some good news. In my travels, I noticed that there were several rotten bins left. If we can continue to sweep some of those into town,
They probably do
Are they the right color?
Orange.
Oh, they're orange.
That's why I knew they got.
We spent a lot of time, as you know, looking at should we buy the carts,
Yeah.
which cost the town $55,000, and we
Yeah.
$85,000.
It's a big number.
And we decided that the issue is a lot of people can fit their recyclables in a blue bin, and they don't need a big cart. So do you want to buy a cart for everybody, whether they need it or not? I think this proposal is a great idea because, number one, people move out of town. Just as we're acquiring some orange ones, we're also losing some blue bins. I learned recently that we are out of blue bins,
Yes.
so anybody who moves into town doesn't get one. So we need to replace them anyway. And for anybody who has a lot of recyclables and is complaining that it doesn't fit in the blue bin, give them another blue bin. And if we bought 400 at $7.50 a piece, $3,000.
Oh, for the larger ones.
Yeah. So $3,000 to $5,000.
Send me all the financial data. I'm on the finance committee. We've been talking about this in finance.
We just talked about it.
And
Last week.
it seems to me a no-brainer to offer some of these things in some way, shape, or form. Right.
I don't see us going door to door.
But no.
I don't see that we have the personnel to go door to door and say, do you have a blue bin? But we should have a place where they could be hooked up within a public works garage.
Or town hall.
But the authority could work and hit the non-compliance. And that doesn't involve any town personnel. I'd go out, get personnel, and hit just people we know, obviously they're not recycling. And I pretty much know what those households are. I don't think it's any of you guys. I didn't do any restaurants.
I saw Jim's here.
Actually, the picture of my house was in this one. No.
But at least you start that process where if you're not recycling anything, we can't make it any easier. We're picking it up. You just have to put it here instead of there. Give them a blue bin, start soft pedaling. We know you're not recycling, apparently you may not have a bin. Hit them with that, and then go back later and find out the causes. It's just this. It's too much money going into their disposal, and that money needs to stay here.
I think it's part of the education effort. If we could somehow quantify the opportunity lost here in terms of maybe total dollars. So what I'm looking for is perhaps some way to take what you've done and extrapolate it to 52 weeks in a year over everybody in Ledyard and just come up with a rough order of magnitude number that says, look, if we were perfect, from where we are now to perfection, we could save in a number. And then we could, as part of the education, take that number and translate it. That's this many school teachers, or this many more hours of library operations, or whatever. That sort of thing, I think, means more to people than just saying, well, we could do better. Yeah, okay, we can do better, but is it worth the effort to
Give
be?
them a hard number.
But if you give it to them as something as, hey, by not doing this, this is what it means.
Mr. Are you going back into the schools?
I can. The fall's about here, so I'll probably end up going back in for.
That's a great way to, if you reach all the kids, then they take the information home.
Especially those little kindergartners.
What are you throwing out in the garbage for? Actually, I hate to say it, they do.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I
The
ask them.
little kids do it. They get that.
You have to mom and dad. But what I can do is let me provide numbers from a couple, 3 vendors in increments for, say, 3 different size containers in different quantities of, whatever the shippable quantities are. And then we have some numbers you can look at. I can provide that to folks.
Will they say Ledyard now?
Excuse me?
We need to say Ledyard.
They do.
We need to.
Not city
Well,
up,
the ones we
not
have
city
to,
up.
we need to.
Oh,
make
yeah,
sure
no,
new
that's,
ones do.
yeah,
Not city up. Because
it said the city of Ledyard is actually town.
less likely that people will take them with them. Not that it won't stop it, but it.
Provide the numbers to the mayor and Steve Maslin, because they're key players in all this.
Yeah,
I would think that they would have to be involved in any effort to actually buy something and distribute it. So,
Yeah, I work closely with Steve, and then because he's got his hands around us pretty well. So, that's definitely doable.
Thank you very much. Mayor Allen.
I want to add to what Winston just said. It helps to quantify it. The report from SCRRRA for last month, we reduced tipping fees, we reduced tippage tonnage by 44 tons, which is pretty significant.
In what period of time?
For the month.
For the month, okay.
From the previous month or the previous year?
Previous year, same month.
Okay.
Is that kitchen mix or recyclables?
That was dumpage, that was burning stuff. We had $4,350 for sale of recyclables, and we reduced our tonnage by 60 times 44. So the total save for last month was $6,900. That's only 1 month.
Heads up. Thank you very much for the report. Any other committees, commissions, or boards that would like to address council tonight? Okay, comments of town councilors? Any councilors have comments? Councilor Martin?
Yeah, my message tonight is for parents and grandparents of teenagers or young adults. If you have certain prescriptions around the house, like Klonopin, Valium, Oxycontin, Vicodin, Flexeril, anything like that, muscle relaxers or calming prescriptions, keep an eye on them. There's a certain segment of that demographic that's their drug of choice these days, and it's so easy to get. It's in almost every household. Just know who your kids' friends are, too. Don't be afraid of asking questions and getting phone numbers, and just know your kids are hanging out with you. Don't worry about being thought of as uncool, because we're parents and we never will be cool. And it's your kids' lives we're talking about. That's all.
Councilor McGrath.
Last night, the Parks and Rec Commission had their monthly meeting, and I'm going to call him Citizen and elderly advocate FX Williams asked to be put on the agenda. And he came and spoke to the commission and mentioned to them the burdensome things that Jazzercise was at the senior center. So the commission listened and said that on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, they're going to have a special meeting at 6 o'clock to discuss Jazzercise. Also, I'd like to thank Roxanne and Bruce Edwards for their effort on obtaining a grant, or at least in applying for a grant from the Cable TV Advisory to enhance our access capabilities. That's all.
Thank you. Other councilors, Councilor Diaz?
Yes, I read an excellent article in the Ledyard Patch today on the hazards of social networking.
Here comes the Facebook.
Specifically Facebook, and it's really, we laugh, but I'm very anti-social networking, and I'm very anti-Facebook. The story is entitled, "You Aren't Going to Like This Story." I think Facebook, that like something to do with Facebook. But it talks about a specific instance in one home here in Ledyard, and I advise everyone should read it. You know, there's one thing certain. You know, if you put anything on the internet, anything, it's reasonably certain that that's going to be public. If you put anything on Facebook, it's almost absolutely certain that it's going to be public. I mean, you read the articles; they sell the pictures, right? And then read this letter. It's something that the parents should look at very carefully, what's happening on these Facebook accounts. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Solms?
And the address for that is ledyard.patch.com, for those who don't know it. And I also want to give the residents the address for more information on recycling, the previous subject. So if you go to ledyard.ct.us, you'll be at the Ledyard official town website page. In the upper left-hand corner, actually it's about halfway down, but it's on the left side, click on Trash and Recycling, and then you click on Curbside Collection, also on the left, and it will give you all the details of what's recyclable, what's not, and some tips. So, hope some people will go there.
All right, other councilors' comments. Councilor Davis?
Well, to rebut Mr. Diaz's Facebook comments, I would mention that there's some good discussion going on the Ledyard Gillsbury Community Forum on Facebook about preparations for a possible hurricane. So it does have its benefits, and it is an opportunity for people in town to discuss common concerns.
Amen.
Other comments from council? All right. Review and approval of prior meeting minutes. We had 2 meetings on July 13th, a public hearing and a regular meeting. Are there
So moved.
motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments or corrections? Some have been provided.
Yes.
All right. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes of July 13th?
Rochester, call the roll. This isn't WPC.
Will respond when Roxanne calls her name. Then let me finish this up. Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis? Mr. Diaz?
Yay.
Mr. Holdridge?
Abstain.
8 in favor, 1 abstention.
Okay, the motion passes. Is there a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of July 27th?
I could have all at one time.
No, it was two.
Okay, so moved. I said do them all.
Second.
Second.
Comments, corrections?
Provided.
Provided. All right, please call roll.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
I get to watch it from Maine.
You can vote
On my laptop, so yes.
Are you watching it now? Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr.
He's reading the
Holdridge?
pass.
Abstain.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
8 in favor, 1 abstention.
Motion passes.
No.
Okay, you've been given a communications list. Are there other communications that you know of? Roxanne, is the legislate, or not the legislate, this Connecticut Department of Health letter, is that on, it's not on the
That's the one we just got today.
correspondence list, is it?
I don't know which.
That do with,
Oh, no, that just came right
okay.
before.
I'll just mention this briefly. Dated today, subject is Hurricane Irene. This comes from the Department of Public Health. And it provides some links that you can go to flood and stormwater advisory for public water systems, and Environmental Protection Agency generator guidance for water and wastewater systems. So there are concerns for the public water systems in the event of a hurricane, particularly with significant storm surge, so that it's providing resource material for municipalities dealing with that. Okay, the referrals are also listed on the communications list. Subcommittee and liaison reports, administration. Councilor Sullivan.
Administration has not met since the last town council meeting. So nothing to report.
All right, community services.
Our committee has not met either, but I would like to take this opportunity to say a word about the 12 Points Preston Trail Committee. Because it actually is background information for a couple of items that are on our agenda later in this meeting. As you know, the 12 Point Preston Trail Committee was established by a joint resolution of 3 towns, Groton, Ledyard, and Preston, back in 2008. And then we were charged with the job of looking into the feasibility of this kind of a trail through the 3 towns. And also to look into costs and to approach the landowners about the possibility of easements, and generally look into costs and grant possibilities. And we reported back actually in late 2009, just at the end of the last town council. And at that time we were commissioned to continue our efforts and to continue to look at especially the landowners, and also to seek grant applications and what the possibilities for grant applications were. Now, one of the key landowner, of course, is the city of Groton, and I would report that after that meeting, at the time we actually had a master plan written out, which told about all of the efforts that we had done and why we selected the preferred route, and actually done some research about what they do in other reservoir areas in Connecticut to keep clean water at the same time that they allow the access. And there are lots of answers to those questions, so that public access and clean water are not inconsistent with each other. We found out for sure by looking at what they do in other communities, and we would like to have reported that to the city of Groton, which is a city council of Groton. But they did not invite us, or we asked in two different times to be allowed to be on their agenda, and we're not. And in fact, the last chair of the town council, on behalf of this town council, Mr. Rodolico, wrote a letter from our town council to the Groton City Council, saying that they had just heard from the committee and were impressed by the work that we had done, and asked that the City Council of Groton give us a hearing. We never got a response from that letter. And it's been almost 2 years. This past June, we wrote another letter to the Groton City Council asking for a hearing because there had been new developments. Since June, we have not heard. Anyway, it seems to be, and I can say it quite plainly, it's stonewalling this project. And I think that the reason, of course, is that we have not, for the past 100 years, had any leverage at all. The town of Ledyard has had no leverage with this city of Groton regarding that reservoir. However, in the next couple of months, we may have some leverage. And that is because of the contract with Groton Utilities. I would think that we might take advantage of this opportunity to put in a paragraph of that contract saying that that we expect Groton Utilities to engage in good faith negotiations to allow public access to the reservoir property. And we ought to do that in enough time in advance, not the last meeting before we renew the contract, because we've got to use some brinkmanship. That we really mean it. And then we could cause them to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars with this contract with Ledyard. And we got to really mean it. And I'm saying it now because we're going to be doing a temporary contract that takes us up to October 31st. And then this council will be going out of business. And there might be people on the next council who don't feel as passionate about it as I do, who will follow through on this. So I think that we need to get our act together early and put this paragraph in there and be ready to stand firm. And we should do that before we get too close to October 31st. Or else we might lose the opportunity and we'll get a little weak-kneed about it. Anyway, we also, I wanted to report that we have an opportunity today to apply for a grant application, and that's later on the agenda. And so I'll talk more about that later.
Thank you. Finance Committee, do you have to report? Is this related to community services? Yeah.
It is. We heard earlier tonight about Ledyard renewing the contract. We recall a year ago when we did renew, we said, we should call them in about October and hear from them with a full update. I don't know if we go through community services or not, but I think it's basically time to initiate that process. I hope that we as a full council hear from Ledyard within the next 8 weeks, so that we will be fully informed prior to January 1st of this year about whether or not to renew next year. So I guess I would, if that's action for community services or perhaps the chair, but I'd like to see something started formally.
That's appropriate. So we'll refer to community services that action to request reporting. And it's timely because you probably also saw a copy of the letter from Ledyard acknowledging the fact that the Council of Governments has put out a request for qualifications for individuals who would be able to assist in 6 municipalities forming a health district. Ledyard is named as one of the 6 again, so we have that as leverage again.
Just wanted to add to Councilor Sullivan's question. I was thinking we'll be discussing financial reporting tonight on a equity distribution that we received from Kermer this last fiscal year. And possibly in your discussions with Ledyard, I was thinking maybe Ledyard could offer something. We were talking about reducing prices, right? And a lot of their revenue is based on how many of certain things occur during the year. So the revenue isn't a given. And I was thinking maybe Ledyard could do some sort of equity distributions similar to what Kermer's doing, so that they have that rate on a per person basis that we pay. But if at the end of the year financials they see that they've made more money than they projected, then that equity could be distributed back to the towns, and in some weighted way, like the price that the towns pay, to reduce those costs. It's something you might want to talk to Ledyard about when you're discussing this. And we also talked about possibly getting the towns that were involved in Ledyard together to speak to Ledyard, right? I don't think anything happened there either. I don't know if that was initiated by the legislator or the mayor, or who could talk about that, but
Other than through their normal board of directors.
Exactly.
Representatives.
yeah.
Well, the discussion was that we would have some kind of a get together in the fall.
Right, and that would be
Which is
full-time.
rapidly
Right.
approaching.
Right.
Okay, finance report.
Yes, Finance Committee met on 8/3 and 8/17. And there's several things on our agenda tonight, but a couple things I wanted to discuss that's not on our agenda that we discussed in Finance. First, we reviewed the police outside overtime process. We're currently charging $75 per hour with a car. For outside overtime is when the police are helping CLMP or AT&T or even our own public works people on road projects. We were under the impression that the town was charging in excess of $100 an hour when we put a person, we being finance, when we put a police officer on the road with a car. We found out in our investigation that we're only paying $75 per hour, being paid $75 per hour, which in my opinion, and doesn't cover our costs, because just the cost to the policemen are $45. And then you have insurance costs, and you have overhead costs, and you have pension costs, and you have things like that, and you have wear on the car, and you have the gasoline costs when the car is idling, so there's a substantial amount of costs that I'm sure have not been considered in the $75 per hour. We know, for instance, pension costs in and of themselves is 23.14% of their salary. So we passed a motion in Finance to recommend that the Town Council author an ordinance which formalizes the outside overtime process, because the process in and of itself is informal. There is no contract now that's provided between the town and AT&T or CLMP or there's nothing that formalizes the relationship or the amount of money that's going to be charged. It's just by word over the phone. So we think that process has to be formalized. We think it should be formalized in such a way that on an annual basis there's a contract that's provided to all of the normal users of this service, and that contract spells out for the next year, these are the rates, right? And it can be done as a standard process every fiscal year. And it also defines certain liability issues. I mean, right now, I don't know if a policeman, God forbid, if one of our policemen is doing a job like this and they get hit by a truck, whose insurance, what liability, I mean, where does all of that, right? I believe it comes to us, right? Because we're the employer of that person that's standing out there in the street. Has that ever been looked at in this town? I'm pretty certain it hasn't. And the same thing goes for the what we're doing with our volunteers now. I think we have to look at that as well. So we're recommending that admin look at that. And we also recommend that these rates be set by the town council. Town council sets a lot of other rates. And it's something that the town council can do on an annual basis in the beginning of the fiscal year and set two rates, one with an automobile and one without an automobile. And hopefully those rates are set by finance with the actual knowledge of what the cost really is. So that's one of the items that we discussed. We've been talking about the IQM2 system and reviewing its capabilities both in the IT committee and in finance. IQM2 is the system that now broadcasts our meetings live over the internet, which you can see now at, what's the URL? He's the URL guy. But
It's too long.
the system is really excellent and has certain document management capabilities as well. And we also have a document management system that we're using that we started this, I think, about a year ago, maybe a little less, that I understand from several people, Regina, Marcia, and others, that it's not being used.
Not all capable.
Not all the capability, or not being used as much as it could be. And so there's an overlap in the functionality in the applications. We've been talking about moving some of the capabilities to the IQM2, and we're investigating that possibility. We received health insurance consultant bids. That review is currently in process. This is a huge issue, I think, that we need to formalize as well. We have the ordinance that says anything over $7,500 has to be bid, and we do bid things like our auditing, and we issue contracts for a certain period of time with a certain period of optional time. Health insurance was costing us $40,000 a year, but we've never went out to bid for it, to my knowledge. Or if we have,
It used to be included in the insurance, and it's now separated. That's what happened.
so, but we need to go out to bid for this on a regular basis, and we should be issuing contracts very similar to the process that we use to issue contracts for our auditing agencies. That's being done. We received some bids, and 2 bids have received which are substantially less than what we are paying now. I don't know if I can mention the dollar value, so I haven't.
No.
In addition, where we received bids for the pension plan investment consultants. Those bids too are going to save us a lot of money. And it's something that I'm not sure we've done in a long time as well, and we should also treat just in the same way. And I'm sure that there's other things that we're doing in this town that Finance Committee hasn't become aware of that should be done in the same way. But both of those are being reviewed by town personnel, and I'm happy to say there's a significant possibility that we're going to save a significant amount of money. That's a lot of significance. The HR administrative position has been filled with a start date of 9/21. The person is, from what I hear, I haven't seen any, but I hear this person is very, very qualified. We had to entice him a little with salary. We actually offered him $5,000 more than we budgeted, but that's okay because he's not taking health insurance. So the health insurance would have cost us a whole heck of a lot more than that over this period. So it's still within our budget. It's just moving one line item to the other, well within the capabilities of the town. He's also agreed not to take an increase next year, and I hope all our unions are listening to that. He will be the second person in our defined contribution plan. He won't be in our defined benefit plan, which is also a substantial improvement. Okay, we received a request from the Ledyard Fire Company to go out for bid for the replacement of 2 trucks. Pricing was estimated at $240,000 for the replacement of a truck known as Forestry 12, and $550,000 for the replacement of a truck known as Tanker 14. As you know, every year we put money into an account to save up for the replacement of these trucks, but we don't quite have enough, right? If these estimated costs are real, we'll actually be $100,000 in the red at the end of next fiscal year, and that's after this year's and next year's contribution. The recommendations and the specs have actually gone through to the Emergency Services Commission because, as we mentioned in finance, the only thing I know about finance, fire trucks is that they're red, and I found out they're not always red. So we need to, and it's being done. We're looking at at reducing the number of trucks that we purchase in this town, right? In fact, one of the trucks that they're, actually both trucks, Forestry 12 replacement will also replace Med Response 16 eventually, so it'll have both functions. But Med Response 16 wasn't scheduled for replacement until 2021, so that's not going to save us a lot of money. That truck is sort of, so it's a relatively new truck. And the Tanker 14 replacement is being designed as an engine tanker, which will actually replace Engine 11 and Tanker 14. So they are looking at reducing the number of trucks, and that's a good thing. The bad thing is I ran out the replacement schedule that was provided, as currently provided, and the money that we're putting into the accounts for the replacement. And I ran that out to 2029. and in that year will be $1,787,000 in the red.
But that's assuming we just put into the account what we put in this year, which is not what we used to put in.
Right.
It's a reduction from what we used to put in.
No, I
So we're
understand.
going to have to reverse that.
And we're going to have to look at the schedule, the equipment, the schedule for replacement, and then re-examine our annual contributions. I absolutely agree. So that it doesn't catch us by surprise in 2029 and we're 1.78 million in the red. I actually.
Told people won't be here then anyway.
We received $30,000 in a Kermer equity distribution for last year. I sent everyone a pamphlet from the Kermer site. It was a nice surprise. It was given to anyone. Kermer is our insurance agency. It's an acronym, CIRMA, and it stands for something. But it's sort of like, when you could buy that insurance through, when you're in the Navy, you could buy that insurance through, who was that, I forget who it was, but they also do a distribution. Yes, they do a distribution similar to this. So monies were distributed to all clients with a minimum 2-year history with Kermer, $30,000. So they didn't just give $30,000, that's a weighted distribution of equity. And it's a nice thing. It was a surprise, to me at least. We also received $40,000 these are rough figures, at the end of last year for SCARA, and that was a refund of tipping fees. So we didn't dump as much there, and they gave us a little bit of money back.
We were even recycling better last year.
I received the final, what I believe is the final end-of-year revenue and appropriation summary, which I forwarded for your information. You should have that in your email inboxes. I'll be reviewing this in detail before our next meeting. We authored a letter to the mayor requesting documentation of police overtime. This was in response to that request from the police department for an investigation of their overtime. So we've got that rolling. From the union. And that letter was signed by me, I think, yesterday or something, and the mayor should have it shortly. But what we've asked for in that letter is this is the type of documentation we need. We want to look at that documentation to decide what we're going to do next. We still have not received any meaningful WPCA financial data, revenue, or expenses. I've all but given up on this one. We received a report from our pension investment consultants. I was going to give you a summary of that. It's here, but I haven't had time to look at it, and I don't remember the numbers. So I'll send that out in an email. And that's all I have.
This is what happens when we skip a meeting.
Yeah.
Now, this is what happens when he actually brings his notes from finance.
All right, other questions for finance on any of the myriad of things that he mentioned?
On something that you didn't mention. LD's 124, I'm looking for updates. The previous meeting, we left that meeting noting that there were problems and deficiencies in the emergency services building that the LD's volunteers were putting up with despite the sizable funds that were available. Two, there was a discussion of having, I had it written here in the notes, so I don't have to ask Councilor Wadecki the name of the firm, Holsworth Pelton, to come to a meeting and discuss what the procedures are for documenting how much they bill and how much is actually received. And third, there's a audit discrepancy that's now 2 years running about the way the town does document these funds. And I'm told that as of the 1st of July, despite previous promises, we now promise once again we finally fixed it. I'm hoping for a follow-up. I'm hoping to perhaps actually see where that data might reside to know that in fact the audit deficiency has been corrected. Any update on any of those things?
I'm unable to update you on any of those because I haven't followed up on it. I apologize, but perhaps my esteemed colleague.
The data, well, the last question, that data would reside with the finance director. that's where they're now doing that. But you have to realize, I'm not sure if we finished July yet. I mean, but you did not ask her about it at the.
I didn't, I forgot.
Yeah, we forgot. But we met with her, the last meeting was August 17th, and that's just about when they're finishing up the previous months. So we'll have to ask her at the next meeting for that.
Yes.
And we have not asked Coldwell to do that. And Elvis did come to our last meeting, but that was about the Cascade system. They have not put together a plan yet for what they want to use for the money because we haven't given them that much time, right, Kathy?
We're meeting with him Monday.
They're meeting with them on Monday.
Other questions for Brian?
I'm concerned by your comment that you've all but given up on getting revenue financial data for the WPCA. And I'm concerned because I know how hard you worked on it, number one. Number two, I know you were getting some data. But number three, we have a contract to write. We have to agree on a price for the contract. And without revenue and expense data, which you haven't just been asking for in the last 2 years, it's, we became the WPCA to try to get more access to this data, but this council has been asking for revenue and expense data for years and years and years.
We learned at the WPCA meeting last night that Groton has received 3 separate revenue items. 3, they keep getting, every time they request revenue, they've got 3 different numbers.
Okay.
So they don't even know which is the right.
For the same period?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's my question. Where are we going for this information and why can't we get it?
Well, I've asked, well, first, I share your concern and your frustration. I've gone to the WPCA employees, I've gone to the finance director, and I've gone to the town council. I actually FOIA'd it once. And it hasn't been provided. And I don't know what else to do.
Okay, so I know you did a lot of work on this, and I know things got better, but I'm under the impression that we have better processes in place in the finance department and town hall, so that when the WPCA employees enter invoices and when they track or record revenue, that there's better reporting of it on the finance side. Is that a true statement?
I haven't seen anything on the finance side to say that's true.
We've been told.
We've been told, but I haven't yet any data that indicates. And the problem also with the finances is that the expenses are not categorized in any way that's really, I shouldn't say anyway. It's just this, and when I have received this data and I went to the line item and went to the detail reports, they weren't entered in the right line.
Right.
So,
but we knew that 6 months ago. We discovered that 6 months ago.
but to my knowledge, it hasn't been correct.
Okay. So I'll save my questions for the mayor.
I do have a question for, it's on the finance, is reporting of the pension consultants. I know that Marcia Hancock sent you an email.
Correct.
And are we going to have that committee get started?
I will send letters to those 4 people and ask them to organize themselves and we'll get started before.
Marcia called me, she asked me to sit on the panel to select the consultant, and we're meeting next Friday. And we wanted to have someone from that committee also sit in. So I think she's going to call the gentleman that came to the finance committee meeting. Remember the one that was really all excited? Yeah. But in the discussion, we discussed that it hadn't been started yet, so that's where that email came from. So I'm to blame for that. But we are going to be meeting next Friday, hopefully selecting the consultant.
That gives me a great opportunity to tell the public
You
that
need one more
we
person.
are still looking for the 5th member of the pension committee to deal with these issues for the town council.
There's several members of finance that would like to be at that initial meeting.
The organization there?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we actually thought that the organizational meeting should occur at a finance committee meeting.
So if we could do it.
Either before or, something so that we could tell them to turn stuff over and.
Schedule the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for finance? Okay. Information technology.
Councilor Diaz basically talked about what we did at our last meeting, the conference call with the IQM2 rep. But it occurred to me when Councilor Diaz asked Councilor Soms to give the public the URL for the link, that the URL was a mile and a half long, so we really ought to look at a dedicated URL, do the domain mapping and point it to the URL and just come up with something clever like
What's Ledyard?
Ledyard councilfollies.com.
I like that.
So here's the answer. Go to ledyard.ct.us, right in the center of the top of the page, in big red letters, it says you can now review town council meeting agendas and minutes and view the meetings live or on demand at your own convenience. Click here to see how. So just go to ledyard.ct.us, look for the red letters, click on the link, and you'll be able to watch this exciting meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Soms.
You're welcome.
And that's all I have. That's basically just my meeting.
Any questions or other information for information technology? All right, land use planning, public works.
Yes. As you remember, gosh, it got to be 2 years ago, we kind of tried to work on a blight ordinance, and we didn't go anywhere with that, mainly because the enforcement was difficult. So instead, the zoning commission, we met with all of the land use committees, and the zoning commission felt that they had in place a cease and desist process to take care of some of these blight issues. The concern is that it's an expensive process because you have to hire an attorney to file the cease and desist. So Chairman Treaster had contacted me in regards to the process of maybe hiring he calls it a new attorney who would be much less expensive for Ledyard just to process cease and desist orders. And I know he mentioned that to the mayor, and perhaps the mayor has some ideas about that he could mention. But it sounds like a good idea because we do have a number of those kind of properties around that it would certainly benefit us to move forward on. We get asked a lot about whether we have a blight ordinance. And the answer is we do not, but we do have another process available to us. We just have to move forward in doing that. And I think the resistance from the zoning commission up to this point has been the cost of doing that. August 30th is the Beaver meeting, and I invite you all to attend. I sort of laugh about it, but it's obviously serious concern for the neighbors on Lambtown Road. So we will be meeting, the Land Use Committee will be attending the meeting with the family's attorney, the mayor, public works director, and see if we can reach some sort of agreement on that. The Clark Farm, you'll see in your agenda tonight there's some proposal on the Clark Farm. I did speak to Mr. Major a couple of times in regards to the letter he received as far as termination of the lease, and I did assure him it was not our intention to throw him off before his harvest his crop for this year. So I did speak to him about that. I also learned, kind of interestingly enough, we've all looked at that lease, and it says that he is paying $1. And in fact, he is not paying $1. He said for the last 2 years he's paid $1,100 a year. So I'm not sure where that came from, but he is paying $1,100 a year. So what we've done is we've talked about this, and we were going to recommend the mayor to put out an RFP for proposals, because if you remember, this all started when we had a number of people, or a couple of people, I should say, come to us asking how they get to be able to farm that particular property. So that will be discussed.
Because it wasn't all under cultivation. There was a lot of it.
Empty.
The lease is for the entire property, but it wasn't all under cultivation, therefore there was
correct. And also
part of it being overgrown.
And there is no lease for the state property. Mr. Major is very cooperative, willing to do what he needs to do will make a proposal. I told him we would certainly let him know what that time is. He is going to, and here's where I get in trouble, Bill, you're going to have to help me because I'm a city kid. He talked about that he is going to clean or clear,
Mow.
mow down to the water, to the creek.
That's when you take tall grass and make it.
I know,
low
but
grass.
it's more complicated.
He's got a big lawnmower.
Isn't it hay he's gonna dig up, or is it just grass?
We're talking about, it's overgrown with autumn olive, Russian olive.
That's right.
Okay, okay.
So
And he's going to take care of
he's
that.
probably going to use a brush cutter.
Yes, he's going to take care of that for us. So.
You can't go too close to the screen.
And he's gonna invite Linda so she can see how it happens, how it
Thank
does.
you. And in the meantime, Parks and Recs discussed last night at their meeting about the Girls League would like to put a field there. So there's lots of people that want to do stuff there. So this will be a real thing. And then finally, I would just mention that I have some concerns about the number of vacancies we're starting to see on our land use committees. And I'm not sure, but there's obviously some frustration there, and I observe that when I see the admin's report as far as people resigning. And but it does appear we're filling them, so that's a good thing. And that's all I have to say.
I'm going to take an action, I think, for Roxanne. Let's send a letter to both the RTC and the DTC summarizing the vacancies that we have on town committees, and hope that as people end their summers and start thinking about getting involved again, that we can generate some volunteers, because there are a lot of vacancies. So we're, in many commissions and boards, we're moving the alternate members to regular status and leaving the alternates unfilled. So we do need volunteers. Second thing I'm going to refer to finance is finding out, A, how did the $1,100 fee get determined when the lease says $1 a year? And two, where is the $1,100 going to pay?
Okay.
So, not a revenue item I ever saw.
No, there's a miscellaneous revenue item, and that's where everything we have budgeted for ends up.
But how did that price get set?
Right.
We had no. Okay, now, questions for land use? Yes,
Have we heard any more from the Inland Wetlands Commission about the, we heard from the employee who came and said, yeah, I think it takes 20 hours a week to do this job, and that's not budgeted. We asked,
The
That was
employees-
Lynn Marie.
I'm sorry, the chairman of the commission, she presented the letter justifying what she was standing there asking. The letter was from the employee. So we asked for feedback from the commissioner as to whether or not they actually endorsed that letter and perhaps answer a few questions. Have we heard any more from that? Okay.
I'll follow up on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Council. Yes.
We had approved something to do with the upgrade of a ball field. I think it was to some specs. Remember what, I was wondering what the status of that was, or if you know what the status of that is.
We had to show you guys appropriate, there was a town meeting to take money out of Fund 8 to do a new field over where Pfizer was, Pfizer Field.
Yeah.
And some other field improvements, but I don't know if they've accomplished all that.
It was, that was a Parks and Recreation
Yes.
thing?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions for land use? Okay, Board of Ed liaison, have anything?
Yes. School's going to start again soon. I think it's next week, 31st.
Next week.
My daughter goes into middle school, and I was on their system, their computerized system, so that the parents can watch. It's an amazing game. Oh, I'm glad that was not in existence when I was in middle school. But technology, it's amazing what they're doing with this system. It's really fantastic. We completed several projects. Asbestos removal is complete in the high school science lab, and the lab itself, the new lab, is very near completion. That's good because school starts very soon. Asbestos removal has been completed at the Gallup Hill School, and they're currently finishing up things like putting tile on the gym floor. but that's scheduled to be complete before school starts. If anyone's been in the high school lately, they completed replacing the ceiling tiles on the entire first floor, with the exception of that hallway right by the gym, at the entrance to the gym, in which there's no classrooms. But the difference in the look of the school is absolutely amazing. So instead of building new schools, just replace ceiling tile. It'll save you a lot of money. The school looks beautiful. The gas conversion bids are in. The Yankee Gas has completed running the gas lines to the outside walls of all 3 schools down by Route 12. That's Gales Ferry, Juliet Long, and the middle school. And so the next step is to have the gas conversion done on the boilers, and then they also have to run the lines from the wall to the boiler themselves. So that's really excellent news. So all of those school projects are getting completed before school starts, which is the objective. And the facilities look much better.
What about the bleachers?
Oh, the bleachers, the old ones are torn down. They're getting the specs in. I'm going from memory from a board notes, but they're getting the specs in, and that's being looked at. So they haven't been constructed, but the old ones are down already.
When's the first
Doesn't
football
it
game?
doesn't bode well for the first one.
Yeah, I understand there might be a problem with the first, but they're taken care
I
of.
guess we'll have to tell everybody to bring their own chairs.
Okay, any questions for Board of Ed Land? All right,
Other liaisons? Oh, I have an update. I'll make it quick. In case anybody hasn't noticed, there's still a chain link fence
Yeah, I was
in
gonna ask.
Ledyard Town Center. The work has been stopped because the contractor can't finish the job in time for the Ledyard Fair. So they'll pick it up again after the fair. So it'll have to be after fair, after school starts. I don't know how that's going to work. Haven't got all the details, but there has been a stop. The reason for the delay was Department of Transportation approvals took way longer than we wanted them to.
Way longer than they were supposed to, probably.
Longer than they were supposed to. Yep, that's it.
Just because they didn't know if they were working or not.
It's contingent.
Right, that's right.
Mayor Allen, you have
I'm sorry, other liaisons?
you have another liaison?
Parks and Recs. I just wanted to mention, I was at the meeting with Mary last night, and the commission, great group of folks, and it's their desire to meet with the senior commission. They really feel that if they meet with them directly, that they may be able to get some things resolved, and that's their hope. But I wish them well, but they want to get it over with, is basically what they're looking forward to do. So next week is the start of that, hopefully. That's it.
Okay. All right, Mayor Allen, your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I would wish Dr. Mike at home continue his recovery, and we need him back. CLNP will be bringing me a new emergency plan tomorrow, which is timely, given the weather that we're looking at. And when Sean McGuckin, our emergency management director, gets back in town tomorrow, we will anticipate making a call for the emergency response team to meet Saturday morning and talk about, with as much update as possible, what we think is going to happen with the hurricane. Hoping that it swings. Meeting tomorrow with department heads on the budget for next year. Start discussions with them. For the residents, the Labor Day week curbside collection gets moved up one day for everybody because they have a holiday on Monday. So the collection for that week is Tuesday through Saturday. So it's Labor Day week. It's not this coming week, but it's Labor Day week.
You say move up, I would have said move back.
Move back.
Move to the right, anyway.
One day later.
One day later.
Thank you.
I spent a couple hours with DOT today on pre-construction for the 214 paving job. You've probably been noticing the preparation. I didn't bring all the specs with me, but it will be starting after the fair. I believe it's the 9th of, the 9th wouldn't be after the fair, it would be the Monday after the fair. It's an extensive job on 214. After they get done with 214, then they're going to do 117. 117 won't be as extensive because you may have noticed, and others may have noticed, in the area of the Thankamams down by the cemetery, there's been test borings to see whether the humps are there because of ledge or not. And so the intent of DOT is to change the profile of the road. And it's going to be quite a project. We'll post stuff on the website. I talked with Bill Merrill about the bus schedule because DOT will be working 7 to 4:30, and there will be impact on traffic. They'll try to minimize it, but obviously the buses are on the road by that time. There are alternatives that people can travel to get from Gales Ferry up to Ledyard Center.
What day does it start?
It starts, I don't have the schedule with me, but it's right after the fair.
And is it estimated to take?
3 days to do reclaiming, 5 days to do milling, 8 days to do paving, runs until about the first week of October. Didn't give me a date for, excuse me, didn't give me a date for 117, but it won't be too much longer after they finish 214. DCS Energy was in town today looking at some additional building locations that I think I had submitted to you before. They're coming back on Tuesday to review school sites. They looked at them last year, but the schools that had flat roofs weren't eligible at that time. They are eligible now. There's a fairly short time fuse. It seems to keep shortening. Initially, it was the end of November, then it was the end of October, and yesterday, DCS Energy told me that by the first week of September, we have to make decisions. So they'll be here Tuesday. Monday night was joint EDC zoning commission on the CVS drugstore. My opinion, the meeting went quite well. I talked with their attorney, Bill Sweeney, this afternoon. The intent is to submit the site plan application tomorrow, and they will be on the September 22nd agenda for public action on the site plan. They hope to have it such that they could be done with their permits by the end of October, and if there's still time, be able to do a little bit of work in November. Crack sealing is 85% done. You've probably noticed that most of the streets have been done. Weather permitting, we could finish up within a week. Weather not permitting, we might not finish up within a week. But it's 85% done at this point. Got a letter today, and I think it's probably Attorney Ryan called Counselor Diaz, letter relative to the police arbitration with no explanation to us. I called him. He said that he's willing to come at any time that you want him to give you a detailed explanation. The award for the police arbitration.
They've made their award.
They have rendered their decision. They didn't say anything in the letter what it was, just that they have rendered a decision. IWWC, because that was one of the last things that you mentioned, it's my intention, two things. Intention to submit to you a request to go to 19 hours rather than 20 to support what the IWWC Commission and the current wetlands officer has detailed, and has the Commission believing that that's what we need, is to have more hours. And then lastly, I believe I sent on to you the initial preliminary report from Public Safety on the apparatus. The letter is dated 16 August, and it is in keeping with what you wanted last month, which is to have a study done and a review done of the replacement of vehicles. And Public Safety discussed at the last meeting The expectation is by the end of October to have a 10-year strategy for replacement of vehicles. And hopefully, what was that year, 2029? Have less vehicles by then and not be $1 million short in funding. They're going to move as quickly as possible, and they've also, we had a discussion, and I had a discussion with Fire Chief and Ledyard about going to GSA first to see if GSA could provide at federal government bid prices trucks. Once we get that back, then we know whether we need to go out to bid openly, but first see if GSA can fill the bill. And that's my report.
Okay, questions from the mayor?
Mayor, if I get to add something to your EDC zoning meeting. What we're doing is we're taking the old Gales Ferry School and we're taking that lot and splitting it in half. It's called a free split. But in order for a free split to work, both lots have to be conforming. On the town side, the trailers that are hooked to the old school make our lot non-conforming. So if anyone out there with an earshot of me would like several thousand pounds of scrap metal, please contact the mayor's office, work out some arrangements to come pick them up. There's a lot of money sitting there for somebody that's ambitious and has got a set of torches and a trailer. Something we need to address before us can go forward, or before we do the free split. That's it.
I thought the town planner had a
Yes, he does.
concept for that.
He does.
I think it's on your agenda.
Yes,
There's also some wood, I think, Council Marshall, that goes with the metal.
I've got plenty of piles of wood in my house. I'm good. Thank you.
Mayor, you've mentioned the solar panel savings in terms of percentages. I was curious if you have any numbers of dollars per month in savings on the solar panels.
No, I've been puzzling over, because we have a delivery company and we have a generation company. What I looked at first was the kilowatt hours, month over month, same month. And what I noted, and I may have mentioned last month what the Public Works Garage change was, 22 or 23%. When I looked at the town hall percentage, it was 33%. And I thought, wow, that's really super. But then it occurred to me, we also did an upgrade on the HVAC equipment. And so it's going to be a little tougher with that one to determine just exactly what resulted in the changes. But when I went back to May for the town hall, I noted a 10% reduction in kilowatt hours. So I suspect that was the upgrade in the equipment. And then the difference between that and the 33% would be consistent with what the panels did at the Public Works Garage. I'm trying to figure dollars. I could use your help. It's all over the place.
If we looked at the Public Works Garage, do we have any dollars there?
No.
Because we haven't done anything else in there.
No, but let me be blunt about part of the problem. We reduced kilowatt hours and the bill went up.
Because the rate went up.
But it's fairly significant.
Right, well, you figure out what you save based on that number of kilowatt hours if you paid for the greater number. At the new rate.
Yeah, but we had no notice of a rate change. We have a contract with TransCanada, but because we have two suppliers, actually we have a distribution, and you probably have the same thing at home. We have CLMP for distribution, we have TransCanada for generation. And when I first looked at the CLMP, that's where I thought I was going to get my savings. And that's where I picked up the kilowatt hour reductions. But then I looked at the TransCanada bill and said, okay, how does the kilowatt hour reduction convert to generation? I've got a stack on my desk of bills. I don't know yet.
If you could just send me 2 months of bills for like just one building.
Okay. I think we shouldn't use town hall because we have the additional new equipment and the energy efficiency that we're expecting from that. And this one went up, of course, doesn't have panels here, but with the heat pump providing central air, this one has gone up some. But yes, I'll get you bills.
Let's do town hall in the garage too, because I'd like to see one that has no other changes, and then we'll see what the savings are in town. Just 1 month over the other, would be great. Okay, thanks. All right, second question. Several months ago, I mentioned to you that I'd gotten a phone call from a gentleman soliciting for the Ledyard Police Unit. And they indicated to me they were quite aggressive, and I mentioned that and asked if you would look into it and see what they have actually done for the police union with the solicitations that they've generated, how much money goes to the solicitor, and how much money goes to the police union, how much was raised, and what is the money spent for. There should be some kind of a financial statement from the police union or from that soliciting agency. And I'm just asking if you've had an opportunity to come up with that.
No, I did get hold of them immediately the next day and told them they got to quit the strong arm tactics because there were other people that called too. And it's not unusual for some of these solicitors to do that, but it really sounds and it looks bad when when they're making reference to a town department.
Yeah. And the implication was, that they gave some examples like the ice skating rink. As you know, the Ledyard Police Union gave money for the ice skating rink. That's great. But I still want to know, as a resident and a taxpayer, I still want to know how much money is going to the solicitor and what else that money is spent for. Because that's a nonprofit. So if I donate money, I have a right to ask and I have a right to know where that money is spent.
Where the solicitor spends it?
No, the money that I donate. So they solicit, they collect funds.
Yeah.
The residents give money. I want to know where the money goes and what it's spent on. The example is the ice skating rink, but there's more than that. So, and the last thing was the question about the WPCA. You've been as much a part of this as we have with trying to get information from the WPCA. We discovered the fact that there were difficulties in getting the expense invoices tracked correctly and entered correctly. That was months ago. So my assumption is it's now with finance, that some corrections have been made, processes are better, and we should have some kind of data coming out of WPCA, actually out of finance, for the WPCA. We need that so we can come to agreement on the contract.
I can check on finance as far as providing the data based on what they get. The quality of the data that's going into the system, I think that there was mention of 3 different numbers, revenue for the same period of time. I don't know what the WPCA employees are putting into the system. I know that there were problems with not having the proper account lines charged for expenses, but I don't know what the story is. I'll have to find out for you.
Well, they're your employees, so this has been a problem for months and months, if not years. So I'm hoping we can get some answers as to what's going on there.
Let me amplify that 3 numbers thing. That was a report last night at the WPCA meeting from Groton Utilities.
Mm-hmm.
They have a contractor that's being paid to develop a rate schedule, and that contractor is trying to look at our financial information and come up with numbers that will protect Groton Utilities when they sign the contract. Right? So obviously in their best interest to come up with the right numbers. We need to have the right numbers to defend ourselves. We don't want them to use numbers in negotiating a contract that represent our expenses high and our revenues low compared to what they really are. We'll be at a disadvantage in that contract negotiation. So we feel that we can't get out of this forever interim contract that we're going to have to extend again tonight, until the real rate structure, the real finances, revenues and expenses are established, and we can agree upon a rate at which people will be able to buy water, and it's going to cover the costs. Very important. Thank you. Okay. And yes, Councilor Sullivan.
As mentioned earlier, LG's 124 is the subject of a financial audit deficiency dated June 30, 2009. There is a corrective actions letter from the town finance director that says that was corrected. Nevertheless, there was a financial audit dated June 30th, 2010, which said it was not fixed. And so my question is whether or not it has been fixed. And the finance committee doesn't know. So since the finance director works for you, I would ask you that question, and I would preface it by saying that we're talking about a fund that receives annually well over 6 figures, and an audit deficiency that says a lack of proper accounting could lead to fraud if there was fraud. I stress if there was fraud could go undetected. So I ask you the question if you know if we have yet fixed that problem.
I've asked the finance director, and she tells me yes. I will ask her again tomorrow. I'm not sure what I would need to look at to know that in fact it was fixed, but I was told yes, it is fixed.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to look. I know it's finance's job, but I'm interested in looking at. I mean, it's supposed to have accounting data. Well, we have it. We have it. Should I just be?
Well, we have accounting data, but I think the real question is it accurate? Is it complete? And we kind of know that it hasn't been complete in the past. And I think I saw in one of your last meetings that there was mention of the internet being unreliable and therefore billings couldn't be submitted. So we kind of know that the data is not complete. Whether it's accurate for what's been submitted is a different question.
Well, we've certainly got to know what receipts are coming to the town. You know, I'm not sure we would have the information if the company that was doing the billing, if somebody in that company, hypothetically speaking, had their finger in the till, maybe we would not know that, but we certainly know what comes in. And I don't believe we even had that data previously. We weren't tracking what we should be tracking. How much do they bill? How much comes in? How much does the town see? Et cetera. And what goes into Fund 24, if it's all of it, fine, and if it's not all of it, where else might it go? We just didn't have any of that data, and we haven't, as far as I know, since Fund 24 was created. It's been a specific deficiency that's been pointed out, and I'm still waiting for someone to say, not only yes, it's fixed, but prove it. Since we said yes, we were going to fix it twice before, that's why now I'm basically saying, show me. Prove it to me.
Any other questions for me? Councilman Grant?
Yes, I'm interested in this request for proposal that the COG is putting out on behalf of the 6 towns on forming a rural health district. How much money has been set aside for that?
I'm not sure that there's been money set aside yet because there hasn't been. The COG is looking at actually forming a health district. The COG.
The 21 towns or 6?
Well, it would be a subset, if you will, of the COG, but having the COG have the health district. And so that, I didn't get a copy of that letter, but that's okay. I hear what it says. A consultant, the COG is looking for a consultant to aid in something, and you've got the letter. I'm not sure what it says.
I would assume that Ledyard and Annex would bid on that.
No, I wouldn't assume that because the intent of the COG and the 6 towns is to continue looking at an alternative for Annex and Ledyard.
But they're the ones with the information to respond to that proposal.
Well, I guess I got to ask you to see the letter or tell me what it says, what the consultant, what the scope of work is for the consultant. I don't think it's for budget things. I think it's for how do you set up a health district
Right, I saw
correctly.
a letter from Baker, and it was much more involved than what's on the back there.
Well, what they've asked for is a request for qualifications. It's a little bit different.
Okay, but I saw
Tell us who
something
you are.
different, yeah. Okay. But I was just curious as to how much this is going to cost.
To get the qualifications?
No, when you start actually getting proposals in, somebody's going to bid on it, somebody's got to do the work. How much
Oh.
money is going to be set aside?
What happened last year that led up to the conversation in December was that the 6 towns have been meeting for 2 or 3 years, developing information, and the meetings have continued.
But that information was mainly incorrect.
It depended on who looked at it and who said it was incorrect. The health district was viable, the health district is still viable, and what's being looked at now is to have somebody that can determine what the scope of work would be and how you set up a health district correctly. The work of budgeting and staffing and all that is being done by the 6 towns.
Correct, but somebody has to pay this consultant, that's what I'm saying.
And I don't know what it is yet, because we don't have one.
But is the COG paying for it, or the 6 towns paying for it?
This is the first I've seen of the letter, I don't know.
I would think the 6 towns would pay for that as opposed to the 21 towns.
I can't imagine towns that are not of the 6 wanting to participate at all.
Right. Okay.
Other questions?
Yes. The new position that was funded for the town, I believe it was the Elvis position for additional part-time driver. Can you give me the status on that?
Well, I read the minutes, and I noted that Elvis had indicated they had not advertised for it. I did take an application. There had been a position for dispatch, not Elvis, but a part-time dispatcher. And so I've been looking through the applications that have come for that, and I took one down to Paula and asked her to share it with Elvis because it looked like it was an EMT with lots of qualifications and experience looking for part-time work. So bottom line, answer to your question, I don't believe that Elvis has posted it, but there is a pool of applications that have come in.
As a follow-up, I heard a rumor that we missed 6 calls last weekend. Someone just offered that to me. I don't know what it was. What I heard was that in last weekend, I guess that was Saturday, Sunday, there were 6 calls that came in that Elvis was not able to respond to. Do you know if that's? Well, Elvis is here. Perhaps they can respond.
Well, he's a dispatcher, so he can.
Oh, hi, Mr. Dispatcher.
What are you looking at?
Is that appropriate? We can hear you. That's fine.
I don't have a physical number that says that we missed 6 calls. I do know, however, that as a whole, Elvis has been doing a better job of getting crews out and including multiple crews at the same time. This is not just during the day when we have one paid crew and getting one volunteer crew to supplement that at the same time. This is on the weekends when there are multiple calls coming in, on evenings when there are multiple calls coming in, when there's no paid staff involved. Elvis has been doing a much better job of getting multiple crews out at the same time, let alone just one. So I cannot physically tell you that we didn't miss 6 calls. I obviously I can't be here 24 hours to monitor that. But from what I'm seeing and from the comments I'm getting from people in the emergency services community, we are doing a better job, and I know there's a lot of newer members who are willing to do a better job of getting crews out and completing crews. So I can't tell you that we didn't miss 6 calls last weekend alone. That seems like a pretty high number for what we did last weekend. But I do know that there were multiple crews out at one time in the last 2 weeks.
That part-time driver was not taking care of this.
I understand. 2 issues. Thank you.
But isn't it your job, Mr. Mayor, to post positions, not Elvis?
Only if HR is given, if Karen is given something to post. We have to be asked to post a job.
But it's in the budget?
Correct.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
why isn't it posted?
It should be. And
Yes, it should be.
You have the Elvis people here to talk to.
Right.
But yes, it should
But
be done.
Isn't that part of your responsibility to post the jobs?
Only when Karen in HR is given a job description, and is given a request to post a position.
This position description already exists, right? This won't be
Yeah.
any different than the other jobs. So we ought to be able to go on this one.
And just to add to, we do have a few applications. I thought that it had to be posted a certain number of days before we could actually start interviewing. And I have not gotten in touch with Karen to verify that, just because we don't want to just take the applications that we've already had and leave somebody out that might be interested in the position as well.
You need to post it. You can't
Right,
just-
absolutely.
And my last, if I may ask one last question.
Promise?
We were doing a survey some time ago. You had a gentleman that was, Mr. who?
Mr. Curley.
Mr. Curley was helping you with a survey regarding the staffing. That was 2 years ago, I think, that started. Can you give me a status number? Last year. Oh, last year.
He discontinued because the conclusion he reached was that the council wasn't going to use the information that he developed, and so he stopped working on that project.
Where did you get that idea from? We've asked you numerous times how that survey was going. Clearly, we were interested in the results of it.
I'll ask him to send you a letter, but his conclusion was that it wasn't going to be used 2 years ago in the budget process. What he saw, and I can't speak for him, but what he indicated was that what he saw indicated to him that it wasn't going to be used, and the budget process was going to result in personnel actions that would not be affected by his study.
Doesn't make sense to me, because at that period of time, you told us that this wasn't going to be done in time for the budget process, and that we would move on with the budget process without that survey being completed, but perhaps it would be completed in time for the next budget process, which has since come and gone. So let me just say something doesn't ring true in that statement.
Well, I'll speak to Dr. Curley, and we'll ask him to come so we can have a dialogue, but instead of having a third party discussion.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the mayor? Okay. Old business. Councilor Sullivan, do you don't plan to move the item under old business? Under new business, before we begin new business, is there a need to modify the agenda?
There is. I'd like to add two items. One is, I have another one. I move to amend the agenda to add an item to discussion of possible action on the motion to authorize the mayor to sign a 2-month extension agreement dated August 23rd, 2011 to the city of Groton and Groton Utilities in the town of Ledyard to operate the water systems owned by the town of Ledyard effective September 1st, 2011 to 31st, 2011. In addition, I'd like to add another item, I don't know what number it would be, for discussion on the police, discussion and possible action on the police overtime, outside overtime that I discussed in my police outside overtime process and fees.
Having already heard you on that topic, is there anything?
Well, I just wanted it.
Full council can do before it goes to finance.
Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to go to admin, I guess, too. I mean, or maybe we could get the other council's thoughts on this. I just want to make sure that that's cleaned up.
Well, it's more than clean up. It's got to be created.
Right.
And it looks to me like it's a shared responsibility of admin, but finance has to come up with a formula for. And if it's done as a formula, then each year the factors can be reviewed and the costs updated.
Okay.
So can we just take it as a referral to both finance and
Yes.
admin that we want to create an ordinance with regard to the outside overtime?
Yes. That would be fine. So I would draw the second item.
So is there a second to?
There's a second on the first item.
Okay.
I believe you have another item, and that's why Elvis is here.
Another item
To add to the
to
agenda.
add to the agenda
Yes.
The uniform.
that we don't know about?
Well, there was submitted, I know there were emails concerning, and that's why I believe they're here. I haven't talked to them about it, but I think they're here concerning uniforms.
You are correct.
We never got anything on that.
I never got anything on it.
You didn't get the email from,
From what I was told, the finance committee was made aware that we were going to be here this evening to talk about the purchase of a dress uniform for LV's members.
We had this
and that
discussion at finance.
we would act
never
on it.
received nothing. We
Well,
never received
because-
anything from that last meeting.
Jake, who was doing the research on it, he played phone tag with one company regarding our the quotes that we were looking to get, and I think you just got it on Monday.
Yes, the letter I actually submitted is dated August 16, 2011, and I believe that should have been passed on. I believe a hard copy was passed on to the mayor, and we were told that a copy was emailed to Councilor Diaz.
I think she just gave him a letter. She just emailed him a
It
letter.
sounds like it needs to go to finance.
Well, the discussion at finance was that one of these uniforms in time for the September 11th, and that was why we were willing to entertain. Councilor Diaz was going to have a special meeting before if we needed to discuss anything, but we not received.
I didn't receive it.
Now that we know, is it something we can talk about?
Yeah, let's add a motion and possible action on LV's, that's fine, on
Yeah.
LV's uniform, that's fine. I apologize.
We appreciate the time.
Was there a second? All right, so we have a motion and a second. So, no, wait a minute, hang on. The item on the agenda with regard to, or the proposed item for the agenda about the contract, we'll make that item 4 under, no, get to the bottom of the page. Make that new item 8 for administration. And then renumber finance items and, which will now end in 13, and the motion about uniforms would be new item 14, that would make land use and be renumbered
No,
to
there's
15.
there's an amendment agenda. Are you using the amendment agenda?
Yeah. Okay. As long as it's on the website, because I'm on the website. Okay, so we're just taking a vote, call the roll to add these two items to the agenda.
So we're gonna vote from together.
Yes.
Just one motion to add it to it.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, motion passes. New business, consent calendar, is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
A motion is second on the consent calendar. If anyone objects to anything on the consent calendar, please say so. Otherwise, please call the roll.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Administration, item 3.
I move to appoint Mr. Edward Lynch, Democrat, 11 Red Brook Lane, Ledyard, as the Planning Commission representative to the Ledyard Town Center Committee, filling the vacancy left by the late Peter Brook.
Second.
Sorry, the first name of the gentleman is Edmund Lynch.
No other information needed?
Nope, no other information.
All right.
We'll be happy to have her.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis? Yes. Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Item 4.
I move to appoint Mr. Julian Lupinski, Democrat, 12 Hillside Drive, Gales Ferry, as a regular member of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission for a 2-year term ending October 13, 2012, filling the vacancy left by Mr. Scott Anderson.
Second.
Again, no discussion.
Please call roll.
We're happy to have his continued service.
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
The motion passes. This, he is moving from alternate status to regular
Yes.
status, as is the next one.
Yes.
All right, item 5.
Item 5, I move to appoint Mr. Michael Lamb, Republican, 70 Colonel Ledyard Highway, Ledyard, as a regular member of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission for a 2-year term ending October 31st, 2012, filling the vacancy left by Mr. Ian Cole.
Second.
I don't think that can be the correct address.
I really don't know where he lives.
I was wondering,
70, if there was a 70, it'd be in Groton.
That's gotta be right.
370 or 470 or 8. I know it's not right, right address, but it's
Let's
okay.
keep going.
We'll still
Six-
appoint him.
It's 6-7.
6-7.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please
Friendly
call roll.
amendments.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Item 6, Councilor Sullivan.
I move to appoint Mr. Drew Weshy, unaffiliated, 19 Gallup Hill Road, Ledyard, as a regular member of the Zoning Commission for a 2-year term ending December 31st, 2012, filling the vacancy left by Mr. James Fernandez.
Second.
Again, you're moving somebody up.
And we're grateful to Mr. Weshy and also to Mr. Mandeville for his many years of service.
Yep.
Yeah.
Please call roll.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis? Yes. Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Item 7, Councilor Sullivan.
I move to appoint Ms. Paula Jackson, unaffiliated, 239 Avery Hill Road, Ledyard, as a regular member of the Zoning Commission for a 2-year term ending December 31st, 2012, filling the vacancy left by Mr. William Gear.
Second.
Good job.
Thanks. And we want to recognize Mr. Gear for his many years of service too.
Many.
Yeah.
And we thank Ms. Jackson
For stepping up.
Stepping up.
Stepping up.
And she's a new alternate, so she's moving quickly.
She's on the fast track.
Yeah, on the fast track. Okay, please call her roll, Barb. So,
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
motion passes. And new item 8, Councilor Sullivan.
I'm sorry, I know we added something, but.
This is the Groton Utilities one. This is your
Yeah.
favorite motion.
I just I move to authorize the mayor to sign a 2-month extension agreement dated August 23rd, 2011, between the city of Groton and Groton Utilities and the town of Ledyard to operate as the water system, operate the water system owned by the town of Ledyard, effective September 1st, 2011 through October 31st, 2011.
Second. And hopefully this is the last extension.
Discussion, questions? Let's call her roll.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. All right, go on to finance. So the new item would be 9, the first item under finance.
Yes. I move to authorize the planning development director to solicit bids for the removal, or do you want me to do the LBs? I'll do the LBs one first.
No.
Oh, no, you're right. Okay. Planning development director to solicit bids for the removal demolition of the portable classrooms at the Gales Ferry School.
Second.
Okay, so this is, as was discussed earlier. This is the portable classrooms in the back of the school. The feeling is that there might be little or no cost to the removal based on the scrap material that these things provide. So he's going to actively advertise for their removal.
Okay. Any other discussion? Questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. New item 10.
I move to approve the amended salary plan, non-union administrative and professional employees, to include the administrator of emergency services at a proposed salary of $30,000 and 19 hours per week.
Second.
When we approved the salary plan last time, we didn't realize that this position wasn't on the plan, so we've added it. That's what was budgeted.
So it was just administrative oversight that it wasn't on the list?
Yes.
Correct.
No other impact. Questions?
This will then allow it to be posted today, so.
Yes.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Item 11 on the signal company.
I move to approve an expenditure of not greater than $3,500 to the Siegel Company to conduct a simple actuarial study of the financial impact of closing future employee enrollment in the town's defined benefit plan and instead changing over to a defined contribution plan in the town council's capacity as acting pension committee. Payment for the study will be paid from the proceeds of the plan.
Second.
The concern here, well, what we want to make absolutely sure is that we're thinking of moving to defined contribution in our negotiations with unions. We want to make sure that we fully understand the financial impact of that move. This study will show us a good portion of that, half of it.
So what do you expect is what? Statement of savings to the
No.
town?
Well,
When-
my concern was if we start moving people out of defined contribution, so I mean defined benefit,
Right.
and will we have enough money in the plan to pay all the people who will retire under that plan? You know, are we going to shoot ourselves in the foot, moving everybody out of, all the new people out, and are we going to have to fund 2 plans, and to what extent?
So, well, your boundary condition is that no new employees go into defined benefit. All new employees become defined
Well,
contribution.
that's the intent of
Right.
hopefully through negotiations.
So you just want to see how those two.
How that, yeah.
The question is if they all retired today,
Well, that would.
Well, they're not going to.
No, I know, I know.
But there is a financial impact if we no longer have the new employees in the old plan. So it's just to see what it will mean.
It's a cash flow issue.
Right.
We want to make sure that the cash flow impacts are fully understood.
Okay. Is it appropriate to take it from the proceeds of the plan when we're investigating other plans?
That's a good question, although Siegel didn't seem to think that that was a problem.
That's a good question. They just want to be paid, right?
Well, I think okay, so the benefit of the study would really be to the defined benefit plan.
Yeah. Which is
Because
that pension plan.
what we're trying to do is ensure that the cash flow in the defined benefit plan doesn't suffer to a point that we know what that impact will be on this potential future move. So I think it perhaps is appropriate for it to be paid out of the plan's monies. But I could be wrong.
so if at the end of the whatever period, we happen to be $3,500 short in meeting employee obligations, what would we do? We'd make up the money, right?
Right.
We're not going to.
Yeah, so.
So it doesn't really matter.
just have to put more in. Right. And the way the market dropped these last couple of weeks, and if you look at those balances and the way 3,500 is a drop in the fund.
Oh, Jim, that was not necessary.
Okay, any other questions or thoughts about this? I mean, certainly we do need the information just to know the impacts. Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis? Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Item 12 on the cable grant.
I move to authorize the town to apply for a CTACSC grant, that's Cable Television Advisory Council of Southeastern Connecticut, in the amount up to $5,000 to purchase wireless microphones, audio sound system, flat screen monitor with wall mount and related accessory equipment necessary to enhance the community's public programming activities. In addition, appropriate up to $5,166.14 from the following accounts: $3,249.91 from CNR Fund 6, account 60001-004-2006, and $1,916.23 from Board of Ed CNR Fund 6 as the town's required grant match.
Second.
So this is the final phase of additional equipment, which includes wireless microphones to feed our camera. 4 of those in total, 1 out here, 1 by each of our microphones here. Something to sync those things, some box that does some fancy stuff. We're using a consultant to help us with this. And also, there's a concept of putting in a television monitor so that when people come to give us presentations, that instead of putting something that people can't see, to have a monitor in a nice place where both the television can see it and the council can see it. The grant was made available by CTACSC as a matching funds up to $5,000. The money is coming out of that line item for our monies was the money for the narrowcast that we've been saving, which we're no longer going to spend. So we have the money in the budget for this. We're just using it for a slightly different purpose, although the same objective, which was to approve the transparency of the council's meetings to the public. And the Board of Ed is also asking for some of these equipments, but they don't have the room for the monitor, so that's why theirs is a little less. And their matching monies will come through CNR, through their CNR account.
Cable TV Advisory Council had $42,000, and one of our representatives, Bill Hacken, said, kind of prompted them, why don't you give some of that money back to the towns or make it available for them to use for additional equipment? So that's how that $5,000 came to be.
And the grant application was written by Roxanne.
Yeah, I have to congratulate Roxanne on this. She's been doing all the homework
Right,
and running
and
around.
Bruce Edwards, too,
Bruce
has been
Edwards,
consultant.
who's been helping us, has been invaluable. He's on the CTS. Oh, maybe we can get him on a board or commission too. That's all I have. Any questions?
No further questions, all right? Please call roll.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. Bratton?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. And item 13 on trails.
I move to authorize the mayor to apply for a Connecticut Recreation Trails grant in the amount of $200,000 from the Bluff Point to Preston Trail Initiative, and authorize the use of town funding in amount not to exceed $40,000 for the matching funds.
Second.
So we haven't specified where this $40,000 is coming from because we don't really know where the money how much of that will actually be money? Because it can also be in-kind services.
Yeah, that's why I'm surprised it's even in the motion, the 40,000 coming first. It should usually, because we usually authorize the mayor to apply for the grant. If we get it, then we talk about the funding. Okay.
Is that a friendly amendment?
I think actually we could leave off that last.
We could leave off the last.
Okay.
Because this is something that the committee is working on, but they would come up with the in-kind thing.
The initiative, stop at initiative.
Okay, friendly amendment, we'll modify that motion to stop at the word initiative and delete the terms "and authorize the use of town fund in the amount not to exceed $40,000 for matching funds."
Because at this point, first we need to apply. If
That's
we get
fine.
it, then we might not get 200, we might only get 100. So, you know, the match. Let's just apply. Hope we get the 200.
Well, Councilor Holdridge, how does this square with kind of being at all stop right now on the initiative?
Well, what the committee is doing, actually, the town of Groton, town council in Groton, has passed a similar motion, so that they are actually applying for the same grant line, $200,000. And what the strategy is to start the trail from Bluff Point coming northward towards as far as the I-95 and Marriott area. At that point, you won't need to use Groton Utilities land at all. You'll be putting lines, bike lanes and so forth on existing roads and up through part of the area here. It'll be a trail. But, and then from our end, we're taking the green trail from Crescent Community Park southward to across the Clark Park. There needs to be some surveying and some work done as far as easements with the couple of private landowners. So we'll need some funding for that. And this bridge to be built across the Joe Clark Brook. And so we're moving southward. The Ledyard application would move south. Both of the applications, the Groton one and the Ledyard one, in the narrative will talk about the whole trail. And we think that this is going to strengthen both applications because if you can show that you're a regional effort, and also part of an alternative transportation plan, that will strengthen the grant proposals. And so that's what we're doing. And Preston, first selectman, is also writing a letter of support for it. So it'll show that there are 3 towns involved in this.
So without city of Groton participation, it uses Route 117 to tie the, put a bike lane on 117?
In the area down by the Marriott there's a wide area at the side of the road because there was an old road bed there. And so it goes, 20 yards from the road to the fence. And so that's the area where the bike lane would be, the bike trail would be through there. Down by the medical center, across from that.
Right. So when you get to 184 or whatever.
Well, no, they're not going to 184.
No, then we would, from the old stone house there, we would have to go across Groton Utilities probably to the top property, town owned land in Groton, town property. And then it would go northward from there. Groton Utilities is the preferred route. But if there is no resolution with Groton Utilities, there is an alternative route that you could use partly on Route 117 and partly on other properties to come up with a grant.
But this grant it's just to do a portion in Ledyard.
Oh, yeah, I know, but if there was no hope of ever having the 2 ends connect, it might not be be looked on favorably, but if there's an alternate plan, then.
There is an alternate route that you could use, not as desirable and actually would be more expensive, but it could still be done.
Yeah,
Even
we
without-
need to apply for the grant to find the
Yeah. So we're trying to do this plan for both ends. There's another thing, that this is actually a reimbursable grant. You have to, the towns have to appropriate the money. If the grant is granted, the town would have to actually appropriate $160,000 and then get reimbursed. That's what a lot of grants are that way. By the way, I went to the town council meeting in Groton a week and a half ago, and they passed this similar motion.
Okay. Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
The motion passes. Now, new item 13 on LV's uniforms.
I move to allow, to appropriate up to $3,000 for the purchase of 20 sets of uniforms for active members
From LV's fund.
from LV's Fund 24.
Second.
Okay, so we had no clue what the cost of this would be. That's why we
They
didn't
got
take
quotes.
any action. They got some quotes, and I thank you for your efforts there. They want this in time for the Ledyard Fair so that they have a more professional and uniform look. No pun intended. Here's the backup on it. This is well below the $5,000 threshold for bids, but they do have backup data for those. It's a roughly.
They have quotes for around $2,800. We gave them up to $3,000.
Just to make sure that everything was covered with regard to shipping and everything.
That's what they look for.
LV's does not have formal uniforms, by the way. Fire companies both do, so they wanted something. And they're only being purchased for the members that they consider active. Very nice of you.
And the shipping will support the.
Actually, the company that we're using is based out of Waterford.
Yeah, there won't be any shipping.
The reason that we're looking to use them is, number one, they come to us, so at our next meeting, which is next Wednesday night, they would be able to come and to measure us in a uniform setting, no pun intended, and they would be able to work with us after we do the initial set of people as new members, start to be voted in as full members. After 6 months, they could be sent over to Waterford to get measured and properly fitted. The other thing is, they are actually offering us a 10 to 20% discount at the end. It's not reflected in this letter. Based on the amount of uniforms we order, they give us a discount for the bulk order all at the beginning. And they have worked with us in the past, in the 90s. And actually what I'm wearing, I didn't wear jeans on purpose, but what I'm wearing is what we have for uniforms. It's usually a $7 to $8 t-shirt right now.
Okay. Any other questions?
Councilor Sullivan, you want some flags?
Now, I have a question that I don't know the answer to. But I'll just ask it, whether or not we have to pay sales tax. Do we know?
No, that actually, because it goes through the town,
Yes.
there will be no sales tax involved.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Land use planning, public works, that item will now be 15.
Move to recommend the mayor solicit requests for proposals to farm portions of 1025 Colonel Ledger Highway and 1087 Colonel Ledger Highway. Closing date for the RFP submissions to be October 1st, 2011.
Second.
And I spoke to that under my council report this year.
Right, and these do not have, well, I guess, land use going to participate in the preparation of the RFP. I mean, we want to be sure that it specifies not only the properties, but that, it's not a one person gets all it type of thing, that there could be proposals, there could be proposal for portions of the properties for different purposes.
That makes sense.
That we might as well try to satisfy as many people's needs as we can, instead of having some of them like fallow and being overgrown with Russian olives and so.
Yeah, the idea is to take care of the property, but also make it fair to the people who have the opportunity to use the property. The price is fair and everybody gets an opportunity to get it.
Good. Okay.
I guess just based on this discussion and the motion that we have in front of us, I'm a little bit confused as to what we would expect the mayor to do with this motion
Yeah,
passed.
that's a good question.
Do we expect the mayor to just go out and solicit requests for proposals, or do we expect the land use committee to provide to the mayor something more specific?
Actually, as I look at the wording, it's not correct. The town would issue a request for proposals. Anyone who wants to farm submits a proposal.
I guess we're authorizing the mayor to solicit an RFP from the land use committee then. Okay, so what do we want to have happen? I guess is really the question. Let's just make sure.
We want some ideas.
Okay, so we,
have at
Well,
least-
we can't do this. The mayor is the chief executive of the town, so we're recommending that the mayor solicit. I don't think we've answered the question of who actually writes the RFP. That's the issue.
Well, normally, if it's the mayor that does it, he would assign somebody to it, which in this case, it would seem like it would be town planner.
Oh, that's it.
But that would be, if the mayor chooses to act on this recommendation, that would be his prerogative.
so we did have a friendly amendment that said, change the word solicit to issue.
Yes.
Okay, and then I take on the discussion, we're hoping the mayor will get some good ideas from Charlie Colonel, but nothing necessarily formal from the land use committee, and then just go forward.
Well, the mayor's here, land use is here, so.
Land use happy with the informal linkage to the planner?
I am. Are you good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's ask Mayor Allen.
Are you clear what we're trying to do? We basically have at least 4 people interested in using the Clark Farm in the former state property.
You know the kind of uses which could help to
Corn, cows.
Agriculture.
Yeah.
So the idea, Mayor, was that not that we have one person leasing it now, we wanted to make sure that anyone else who might want to lease it and might want to pay more money to the taxpayers had that opportunity. But we want to use it for agricultural purposes. We want to require that whoever uses the property mow and maintain the part of the property that they lease. So if they take the whole thing, if they don't plant it all in corn, then they at least maintain it. In other words, it's a farm, and we want to keep it as farm land. They can farm it or they can mow it. And the goal is that they do want to mow it. If we break it up into, so we're asking for proposals. Who's interested? You want 1 acre, you want 100 acres. So they would propose what they would do, and then the town would choose the proposal we felt was best for the town.
No proposals.
Exactly.
Excellent idea.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing came as a question from Joe Lozier, who said,
And then Mr. Lamb as well.
Yeah, Mr. Lamb. Yeah.
And then, again, Parks and Recs, I mean, this is not agriculture, but Parks and Recs asked about the ball field.
They could propose a section, you know,
They could-
if they want to, you know, do a piece, take a piece out of it, that's not an issue, it's just, right now, it's one person renting it when really, I mean, the farmers.
The former state property still has a restriction on it, doesn't it?
That has
Does
no.
that have to be agricultural? That was lifted.
Yeah. But that's still 47 acres there, so, right? So it's a lot of acreage that someone may want to use and maybe not.
So Mayor, we could help, you know, if you were
Inclined
to do this, then.
Well, we'll do it. Not all of it's mowable.
Yeah, right,
If you've been on the property,
Yeah.
you'll see that there's parts of it that nobody can really mow.
But they can't, they also aren't going to want to rent it either.
But if you rent the whole thing, what I'm hearing you say, if you rent the whole thing, you're expecting them to maintain the whole thing.
Will maintain
If
the
they're
parts that
the
can
whole
be
thing, but
maintained.
But I don't see why we wouldn't entertain proposals for portions of it, just to sort of
Yeah,
divide
and
that.
that's easier in terms of maintaining it if it's multiple proposers.
We want to reserve some space for a trailer crossing.
You can get an easement. You can get an easement.
Now, we want a proposal.
All right, so are we, the mayor's okay with what the intent is, and are we okay with this making it say that the mayor will, what was your?
Issue.
Issue request for this?
Yep.
Okay? All right, so with that friendly amendment,
Mr. Sullivan?
yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. What haven't we
One more.
done?
General item. That.
No, I think I didn't update that.
Oh,
It's the event, that's why I asked you if you had the invented agenda.
hang on, I do. Oh, yeah. How could I forget if I complained about the wording in the resolution? I move the council adopt an authorizing resolution of the Ledyard Town Council Homeland Security Grant Programs contained in the draft dated August 23rd.
Second.
Thank you. It really doesn't say a lot, other than we will enter into with,
No, I think we take the with out.
well, this is the wording that came from the state, so we probably don't want to change it.
Oh.
But anyway, what is the range of documentation that might be requested? Since it says we pledge to give the Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security any document they ask for. I mean, this is kind of broad in scope here.
Yeah, why did
What do we get out of the grant? What's the grant?
Well, what in a nutshell, in light of the hour, in a nutshell, for years, the Homeland Security areas, we are Area 4. And the federal government sends money to the state government, which sends money to the various areas. Area 4 is in line to get a bunch of money, and the 40 municipalities that are in Area 4 have for several years agreed to let the committee of the whole decide what happens with the money and the budget, etc., instead of each town trying to grab a little piece of it.
Yeah, why are we now doing this
We do it
resolution?
every year.
We've done this every year? This exact resolution?
I'm not sure if it's exactly like that, but this year they sent this one and they said, please don't change it, leave it just as it is.
I don't remember this at all.
Says I'm looking at the documentation that came from Deanna Shapiro, who is the Secretary of the Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, Division of Strategic Planning and Grant Administration. Said there are two key parts to this agreement.
Part 1 details state use of local Homeland Security funds and the administration of the DEMHS Region 4 Homeland Security allocation, which is the one the mayor referred to. Part 2 details the terms of custodial ownership of assets purchased with regional Homeland Security funds.
You're looking at an actual contract of sorts, is that correct? Yeah.
This is a memorandum of agreement regarding use of fiscal year 2010 state Homeland Security grant funding and custodial ownership in regional assets in DMHS Region 4.
When's this due?
1st of September.
Great.
And we just got it.
Well,
No, I don't know.
we would be authorizing the mayor to sign that through this resolution. Is that correct?
No, the
Yeah.
signature on here is Terry's.
No,
Well,
Oh, that's the
That's
resolution.
the resolution.
Right, okay.
The resolution is to allow the mayor to sign any
Right.
document that
Right.
they deem necessary.
I'm
Well,
looking-
basically, this resolution says, Mayor, you have blanket authority to enter into whatever contract Homeland Security puts in front of you. Now, that doesn't mean the mayor has to sign anything. The mayor can choose not to sign it if he doesn't like it, but somebody needs to review the contract and make sure that
the,
they're happy with it.
the signatures on the last page of the contract are the chief executive officer of the town. Then and I think this may be a carryover from somebody else's document, it says the Wyndham Region Council of Governments, and I think
They're part of it.
Wyndham Region? It's not Southeast?
Oh, no, this is 40 municipalities. There are only 20 in the Southeastern Council of Government. It includes the Wyndham Council of Governments.
That's an idea.
But the local council of governments doesn't have a signature. That's kind of strange. Because you said that the first time they sent you one of these, it was for Oxford or somebody else, right?
Yeah, Woodstock.
Woodstock. Then there was a Regional 4 Emergency Planning Team signature, and then the Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security Commissioner's signature. So there's 4 signatures there, although I'm wondering if one of them is.
Supposed to be our council.
Our council, wouldn't you think? I mean,
Yeah, I would think so.
Well, if we don't approve this, then we have no hope of sharing in
In the money
the
for
bounty
the
of
roll.
it. Right?
Yep.
All right. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis? Yes. Mr. Diaz?
Yes.
Mr. Holdridge?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Quickly.
Without objection, we're adjourned at 10:10.